You have 3 days to leave the house. My sister Emma smirked across the dinner table. Mom and Dad just watched in silence. I didn't flinch. I reached into my bag, pulled out the property records, and placed them beside my untouched plate. Actually, I said, voice calm but cutting, you all have 24 hours. Their forks dropped. Emma's smirk faded. It should have been a peaceful Sunday dinner, rosemary chicken, mashed potatoes, and firelight dancing on the walls. But in my family, betrayal always arrived, dressed in politeness. What they didn't know was that while they whispered behind closed doors, I had prepared. While they schemed, I had receipts. And while they plotted to push me out, I had quietly built the legal walls that would keep them out. That night wasn't just the end of a meal. It was the beginning of a reckoning. 3 years ago, this house was days away from foreclosure. Dad had lost most of his retirement in a bad investment scheme, and Mom's medical bills had stacked higher than the kitchen ceiling. Emma? She was off in Colorado, living her yoga influencer dream, posting photos from Bali while I was scraping together cash to pay the gas bill. I never told them how close we came to losing everything. I just acted. I refinanced the mortgage under my name. Took out a business loan using my freelance design income as collateral. I worked 60-hour weeks from the cramped guest room, often falling asleep next to spreadsheets and overdue notices. They didn't ask how the bills got paid. They just thanked God the foreclosure letters stopped arriving. And I let them believe whatever they wanted. Because I wasn't doing it for applause. I was doing it because this house held every memory that still felt real to me. The floral wallpaper Mom picked out in 1998. The scorch mark on the deck from the fireworks Dad let us light one reckless July 4th. Even the creaky third step, the one that always gave me away on late-night fridge raids. This place was home, not just in bricks and beams, but in blood. I remember the day the deed was transferred into my name. Mom and Dad signed it over at the lawyer's office, their hands shaking. "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked. Dad nodded. "It's the only way we survive this." I was calm on the outside, but inside, I felt the crushing weight of inheritance without celebration. Responsibility, not privilege. That same night, Emma called the first time in months. Not to check in, but to brag about her new Jeep and how her boyfriend had proposed with a sapphire ring. I didn't tell her about the house, or the debt, or the fact that I'd eaten instant ramen for 3 days straight. She wouldn't have cared. Or worse, she would have found a way to twist it into something ugly, like she always did. Growing up, Emma was the golden child. Star cheerleader, valedictorian, daddy's little sunshine. I was the quiet one, the one who never asked for much. And because I never demanded, they forgot to offer. But I remembered everything. Every skipped birthday. Every emergency phone call she ignored. Every time Mom said, "She's just busy, sweetheart. Don't be jealous." I wasn't jealous. I was exhausted. So, when Emma walked back into this house 2 weeks ago with her perfectly straightened hair, monogrammed luggage, and that same condescending smile, I knew something was coming. What I didn't expect was how easily they'd all fall into line behind her again. Emma returned as if she had never left. She walked through the front door like she owned the place, dropping her designer duffel on the hardwood floor and air-kissing Mom like they were brunching in Manhattan. Dad looked up from the couch, and his whole face lit up like it hadn't in years. "Pumpkin," he whispered. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, dish towel still in hand, watching the performance unfold. She didn't acknowledge me. Not even a nod. Not a glance. Later, I'd find out she had texted them weeks ago, asking if she could crash for a bit while she figured things out. She'd left her fiancé, turns out he cheated. Or maybe she did, depending on which version she told. She was rebuilding her life, she said. So naturally, she came here to the one place she never lifted a finger to preserve. At dinner that night, she spoke louder than everyone else. Dominated the conversation. Laughed too hard at her own stories. Tossed back wine like it was water. Mom clung to every word. Dad nodded like he was still her audience of one. And when I brought out dessert homemade lemon tart, their favorite Emma scoffed. Still playing house, huh, Evie? It was a tiny jab. But it landed like a dagger. She never said anything outright cruel. Emma was too polished for that. No, her weapons were subtler. Backhanded compliments, one-syllable dismissals, comparisons too casual to be unintentional. And yet it worked. Within a few days, Mom and Dad started falling back into old rhythms. Emma slept in the master bedroom. I stayed in the guest room, the same one I'd turned into a home office after months of living like a tenant in my own house. Emma just needs space to heal, Mom said softly one morning. Don't make things tense, Dad added, without looking up from his coffee. Tense. That word again. Apparently, existing was tense. Paying the bills? Tense. Trying to hold boundaries? Tense. But Emma flouncing around in silk robes and ignoring every shared chore? Totally acceptable. I kept my mouth shut. For a while. Until I overheard them whispering on the porch one night. She's always been so rigid, Emma said. She's tired, Mom replied. And you know Evelyn, she holds on to things. I just think maybe it's time for her to grow up and move on. Maybe she should find her own place. They didn't know I was standing just inside the screen door. And I didn't say anything then. But in that moment, I knew. This wasn't temporary. Emma hadn't come home to heal. She'd come to reclaim. And Mom and Dad, they were ready to let her. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing about erosion, it's slow, quiet, almost gentle. Until one day, you wake up and realize the foundation has disappeared beneath your feet. First came the little things. Mom stopped asking if I wanted coffee in the morning. Dad left the mail unopened on the hallway table, mail with my name on it. Emma moved my things in the kitchen, rearranged the spice rack I'd organized, laughed about how chaotic it was before. No one asked me. Then came the conversations that paused when I entered the room. The glances between them fleeting but unmistakable. I started feeling like a guest. Like I had wandered into someone else's home and overstayed my welcome. One evening, I walked into the living room to find them sitting together on the couch, wine glasses in hand, fire crackling. Emma was telling them about a real estate course she took online. I think it'd be smart to downsize eventually, she said casually. Maybe even sell the house while it's still in good condition. Get a condo somewhere quieter. This place is just too much for Evelyn alone. I stood there in the doorway, frozen. They didn't even notice me. I left the room without a word and closed the guest room door softly behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at my desk and opened the folder labeled Property Documents. Deed. Title transfer. Mortgage refinance. Tax receipts. Legal counsel notes. My name. My responsibility. My home. But that didn't seem to matter anymore. Because somehow, in their eyes, Emma was still the center of gravity, the one they revolved around, no matter how long she'd been gone, no matter how little she'd given back. She didn't earn their loyalty. She inherited it. And I had to buy mine, month after month, dollar by dollar, and even then, it was conditional. As long as I was useful, as long as I stayed quiet, as long as I didn't challenge the family myth that Emma was the sun and I was the shadow. I started locking the door to my room. Not out of fear, but out of something worse. Foresight. Something was coming. I could feel it in the way Emma avoided eye contact, in the way Mom sighed every time I brought up bills, in the way Dad's voice dropped when he asked, "Do you really need to be here full time?" No one said it, but I heard them all the same. You're in the way. You're too much. You're not wanted. And so, I waited. Not passively, no. I sharpened my silence. I gathered my evidence. I let them underestimate me, let them think I was soft, or afraid, or too loyal to fight. Because I knew the strike was coming. I just didn't know it would come over roast chicken and red wine. It was supposed to be just another dinner. Roast chicken. Garlic mashed potatoes. That lemon vinaigrette salad Mom always made when she wanted things to feel normal. The table was set for 4. Emma brought out wine, some overpriced bottle she'd picked up on her way back from yoga. Dad carved the chicken like it was Thanksgiving. And I sat silently, watching them pretend this house wasn't built on the bones of my sacrifice. Halfway through the meal, Emma took a sip of wine, set her glass down with that signature dramatic flair, and smiled at me like a cat who'd already swallowed the bird. "You have 3 days to leave the house," she said casually. Just like that. 3 days. No discussion, no context. A sentence dropped into mashed potatoes and silence. I looked at her, then at Mom and Dad, hoping for some kind of reaction. Nothing. Mom looked down at her plate. Dad reached for the salt. Neither said a word. I blinked. "Excuse me?" I said quietly, trying to keep my voice from cracking. Emma tilted her head, her tone saccharine. "It's not personal, Evie. We just think it's time you moved on. You've been here a long time. It's not healthy." "We?" I repeated. "Mom and Dad agree," she said smoothly, glancing at them like a lawyer revealing her co-signers. Dad cleared his throat. "It's not about the house," he muttered. "It's about peace, harmony." "Peace?" I whispered. "You think this is peace?" Emma leaned forward, elbows on the table like we were gossiping over coffee. "I just don't want us to keep walking on eggshells. Your energy, it's heavy." I almost laughed. Heavy. The girl who hadn't paid a single bill, who waltzed back in and acted like a queen in exile, was now talking about energy? I set my fork down slowly. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick folder, the one I hadn't touched in months, but always kept near. I opened it, flipped to the first page, and slid it across the table toward Emma. The deed. In my name? Signed, notarized, filed 2 years ago. Then I looked them in the eyes, all 3 of them. "Actually," I said calmly, "you all have 24 hours. The silence that followed felt like thunder. For a moment, no one moved. Emma stared at the deed like it was written in another language. Mom's eyes flicked to it, then to me, wide with something between disbelief and fear. Dad set his fork down slowly, as if trying to keep the table from shaking. "I don't understand," Emma said, voice brittle. This isn't real." "It's very real," I replied, my voice low but steady. "Signed, notarized, legally binding. Dated 18 months ago, the day I paid off the final balance of the mortgage. In full." Dad's face went pale. "I refinanced it under my name," I continued, sliding another paper across the table. "Paid off the liens, took over the insurance, paid the property tax, fixed the leaking roof, the electrical. The mold in the basement. You remember that, right? No, probably not. You weren't here." Emma stood up suddenly, her chair screeching against the floor. Her expression twisted, no longer smug, just cold. "So this is what this is about? Control?" "No," I said. "This is about respect. Something none of you seem to think I deserve." "You're kicking out your family?" Mom finally whispered. "I'm reclaiming what I built," I said, turning to her. "What I held together when everyone else disappeared. What I sacrificed my 20s for. You let her walk in and declare me a squatter in my own home? You said nothing." "We didn't know," Dad mumbled, but the words landed weak. "You didn't want to know," I snapped. "It was easier to pretend this place just stayed afloat on its own, that I was just a quiet presence in the background. Well, surprise, I'm the reason we still have a roof at all." Emma laughed sharp and bitter. "God, Evelyn, no wonder no one wants to live with you. You're impossible. You act like some martyr, like the family owes you a parade." "I never asked for a parade," I said, rising to my feet. "But I also didn't ask to be betrayed over dinner like I was some stranger who overstayed my welcome." I reached into the folder and pulled out the final page, a printed letter from my lawyer, stamped and signed. "This is a formal notice of eviction. You have 24 hours. After that, law enforcement gets involved. The locksmith is coming tomorrow afternoon. You wouldn't dare, Emma spat. I turned to her. You dared first. Dad stood up too, hands trembling. There has to be another way. Evelyn, please. There was, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. It was when I asked you both to sign the deed and you said yes. When you told me you were proud of how I stepped up. When I spent 2 years cleaning up your mess without ever making you feel ashamed. That was your other way. You chose this one instead. Mom looked like she wanted to cry. Evie, she whispered. You're not this kind of person. I stared at her. No, I wasn't. But you made me this way. You let her humiliate me at this table and said nothing. You watched me drown in responsibility and called me tense. And now you want to act surprised when I finally say, enough? Emma moved toward me. I'm not leaving, she said. I don't care what papers you bring. This is our family's home. I grew up here too. I stepped back, my hand instinctively gripping the edge of the table. Yes, we both did. But I'm the only one who stayed when it mattered. And you don't get to walk back in and rewrite history just because you're louder. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Pack your things, all of you, by noon tomorrow, or I'll have officers escort you out. Silence swallowed the room. Then, slowly, Emma turned and stormed upstairs, heels clicking like gunshots on the wood floor. Dad sat down hard, burying his face in his hands. Mom looked at me, and for the first time, I think she really saw me. But I didn't wait for understanding. I left the table, walked to my room, and closed the door with shaking hands. Outside, the house creaked. Inside, my heart pounded. I'd just declared war on the only people I had left. But for once, I wasn't afraid. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, it had always been quiet, in that suffocating, polite kind of way, but hollow, like something had cracked in the foundation and let all the warmth leak out overnight. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed listening the creaks of the floorboards, the occasional closing of a drawer, hushed voices down the hall. They were packing. At 8:13 a.m., I heard the soft click of the front door opening and Emma's voice slicing through the air like broken glass. Just bring the truck around. I don't need help, I just need you to be fast. I didn't move. Didn't go out to gloat. Didn't offer help. Just sat at the edge of the bed, hands clenched in my lap, waiting for the next sound. Footsteps on the stairs. A thud. A suitcase dragged across the hardwood. Then, silence again. At 10:07 a.m., I opened the door to grab coffee. The hallway was empty, but the air was charged like after a lightning strike. I passed Dad in the living room. He was sitting in his old recliner, staring at the blank TV screen, holding the remote but not pressing anything. He didn't look up. Didn't speak. Just let me walk by like I was a ghost. Mom was in the kitchen, packing plates into a box marked fragile. She paused when she saw me. Your father doesn't know where we'll go yet, she said softly, not meeting my eyes. Emma offered her apartment for a while. It'll be cramped. I didn't respond. I just nodded once and reached for the kettle. She didn't mean to, she began. She did, I interrupted. And you let her. Mom's shoulders sagged. She didn't argue. Didn't cry. Just picked up the next plate and wrapped it in newspaper. By 11:40 a.m., the front door opened and closed 3 times in quiet succession. Once for Emma. Once for Mom. Once for Dad. No goodbyes. No final words. Only the sound of departure, and the wind against the windows. At 12:03 p.m., I locked the door. Turned the bolt slowly. Felt it click into place. It was done. No screaming. No physical fights. Just a fracture deep and clean, the kind that doesn't bleed on the outside but never fully heals. I walked the perimeter of the house, room by room. Their things were gone. Their presence wasn't. I could still smell Dad's cologne in the hallway. Still see Mom's gardening gloves on the windowsill. still feel Emma's perfume lingering in the guest room, the one she'd taken over like a throne. I didn't touch anything. Not yet. I just stood in the center of the living room, the space we'd once called family, and let the silence settle in like dust. For the first time in years, the house was mine. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. The first morning without them was eerily quiet. No footsteps, no clinking mugs, no whispers behind doors. Just the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of old wood, and the steady beat of my own breathing. I made coffee and sat by the window. For once, no one had claimed the best seat. The house felt foreign and familiar all at once, like wearing a dress I hadn't tried on in years. I started small. I cleared out the master bedroom, the one Emma had taken like it was owed to her. I opened the windows wide, let the stale air out, repainted the walls soft gray, removed the floral curtains Mom insisted on keeping for tradition, hung a single photograph, me, standing on a mountain trail in Montana, arms outstretched, alone and smiling. Then I moved to the hallway, took down the old family portraits, not to erase the past but to stop it from looming over my present. I boxed them carefully, labeled the container. Memories, not altars. Next was the garden. I pulled out Mom's dying rose bushes, the ones she never tended but insisted we keep because they were Dad's favorite. I planted lavender and rosemary instead, things that didn't just survive, they thrived with space and sunlight. Every task became a ritual. Not of grief, of reclamation. I fixed the creaky stair, the one Emma always complained about. Replaced the light bulb in the attic. Converted the guest room, once my workspace, then her private suite, into a real office, complete with a standing desk and sunlight pouring in at golden hour. And slowly, the house began to breathe with me. It stopped feeling haunted. Stopped echoing with what-ifs and almosts. Started feeling like a place built for now, not for the ghosts of people who left. I worked, I slept, I cooked meals just for myself. I played music out loud. I danced barefoot in the hallway. I laughed real, full-bodied laughter when I spilled coffee all over a rug and didn't have to apologize for it. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. Wasn't adjusting myself to be easier, quieter, more convenient. I was alone. But I wasn't lonely. Because everything around me, the walls, the shelves, the chip tile I hadn't replaced yet, they weren't just mine in paperwork. They were mine in presence, in effort, in intention. And that was enough. It came on a Tuesday. A plain white envelope tucked between bills and coupons, no return address. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. Loopy, careful, cursive. The same one Mom used when she labeled our school folders or wrote birthday cards with smiley faces in the corners. I stood by the mailbox for a long time, just holding it. Part of me didn't want to open it. Not out of fear, but out of disinterest. Like revisiting a book I'd already closed. But I did. The letter was 2 pages, neat, no crossings out, no apology. She said she forgave me. Forgave me, as if I were the one who'd betrayed them. As if defending my home, my boundaries, my worth was something shameful that needed absolution. She wrote that she hoped one day I'd come to my senses, that Emma was trying her best, and that they were managing in the city apartment, even if it was tight and less than ideal. She ended with, "We still love you, Evelyn, even if we don't understand you anymore." I read it once. Then folded it slowly, precisely, and dropped it into the bin beside the recycling. Not out of anger, not as a dramatic gesture. Just because I didn't need it. I didn't need love wrapped in conditions. Didn't need to be understood by people who never bothered trying. For so long, I'd begged for crumbs, validation, kindness, acknowledgement. Now, I was full. The silence that followed their absence wasn't lonely anymore. It was clarity. The house didn't echo like it used to. It held me not perfectly, not gently but honestly. I poured tea, sat by the window, and watched the afternoon light spill across the new lavender plants. And I smiled. Because some stories don't need closure. They just need a door and the strength to close it.